Hello and welcome to Quintessential Comics Book Club! Yay! I'm Alice, your host, and this month we are talking about some cool comics. We discuss one graphic novel and one new issue each month here on the Quintessential Comics Book Club. Basically, I get people to send me what they're interested in. We put up a poll on the Facebook page. People vote for what they want to read, and that ends up being what we read and discuss each month. So this month, October 2017, inadvertently became like the drama month because we're discussing Runaways issue 1, and this is of the new 2017 series, not the original. And we're reading the graphic novel Giant Days, Volume 1. And yeah, they just I didn't plan it this way, but they're both pretty dramatic. Today I've got a good friend of the book club here with me. Tara, how are you doing today?
Oh, pretty good. Excited to talk about these. Really excited to talk about Giant Days. It's one of my favorites. So I was happy that got picked today.
Yeah, no, and some other book club fans have wanted to see us read that and discuss it. So I'm really glad we had a chance to finally read that. Would you be cool if we discussed Runaways first?
Absolutely. We can go for that one. I do feel like it's the one I'll have less to perhaps in-depth to discuss about, because I realized as I was reading it that you really did need to know a lot about the Runaways series beforehand, and I have never made it past the first volume. So
we're probably going to have pretty similar reviews, because that's the same thing here.
Yeah. Okay.
But yeah, I figure we could talk about that now, and then maybe Elijah will join us later, and we can all talk about Giant Days for a while. But let me just put the image on screen, and you can start talking about it.
Yeah, so I was pretty excited actually when I heard about this series, because I'm a decent enough Rainbow Rowell fan. I've read Fangirl and I've read Eleanor and Park, and I generally enjoy them. Those are her YA novels. And I loved his last Star-Lord comic he did with Chip Zdarsky. That was so great. So I was like, oh, this sounds like a solid team. Be there, telling a story, and I can just jump right into it, and I don't have to read the old original series stuff. It can be like Star Trek The Next Generation kind of thing, And then I read it and I was really confused. So yeah, it was pretty, and the writing seemed catchy, but it was like jumping into a deep end, having a very basic minor knowledge of how to swim.
Yeah. My photo app isn't coming up in terms of, like, I have it open in this application, but it's not coming up when I try to screen share it. But that's the cover of the book. That's what it looks like. So yeah, I had a similar thing. I read Runaways, not when it first came out, but later, I guess like 2007, I want to say. So yeah, I read the first volume and I was like, oh, this is interesting, it's cute. I might have read the second volume. And I don't know if it was this series particularly, because I've gone back and I've looked at it and I don't think that's the case, but there was another X-Men type series around the same time that I was reading, and in the second volume they changed artists, and it really threw me off because, all these characters that were like fun, like drawn as fun and interesting characters were all given thong straps, and it just sort of like threw me off of like all of this Marvel stuff for a little bit. And I thought it was Runaways, but going back and reading it, like, I don't think it was. I think it was something else similar at the same time. Mm-hmm. But Yeah, so I don't remember too much about it. And actually, a couple years ago, I did pick up the first volume again to read it because I was like, oh, I didn't like the art. And then I'm like, I think that was another series. But tangent. So, yeah, I'm not super familiar with the original series, but, and I thought when they announced this, I thought it was going to be either sort of like a redo, like because they always relaunch stuff, right? Or they would have just sort of like, oh, well, you know these characters, but here they are in a new adventure. I didn't realize it was sort of like picking up right where they left off in the last volume that they produced. So
I was like, people are dead, I guess. You know what it felt like what was the season of Digimon where they jumped in and some of the characters from the first season were side characters, so some of the plot of the first 2 seasons was pertinent, but you didn't really know what was going on, and there was a new storyline. It kind of reminds me of that, where you jump in and they're like, yeah, this is happening now, and you totally need to know what happened in the finale of the last season. And I was like, oh, but I don't. People died, apparently, you know.
Yeah, so I mean, I downloaded all these images to show you because I have it on my e-reader, so but they're not showing.
Yeah. Fun tangent. This was actually my first time getting both books on Comixology, and I was quite impressed by how easy it is. That's dangerous, actually.
Yeah. It's like if you were an addict, having like your roommate be your dealer.
Mm-hmm.
It's so accessible. Yeah, it's actually sad if I go and look at my Comixology account at all the stuff I've impulse bought because it was on a sale and I haven't actually read them yet. Like, anyway, but yeah, Comixology is great for that stuff. So this issue, it sort of throws you right into the deep end. So, you know, you've come into, like, I remember the characters and sort of what they do, but it starts off with Nico's house, like Nico's apartment, and she's like alone, and she's like, this is what happens, and like she sort of briefly touches up on where, like, how she got to this place, how she got, you know, she has had a brief stint on the Avengers and stuff, and you're like, okay, cool. And then Chase shows up just appears in her apartment with the friend who died, I guess 2 years ago, from the information they gave us. And so I guess if you were like a big fan of this series and you've been waiting for it to come back, or you've gone and like read all of the previous stuff before this first issue, this will be really exciting. But in terms of like new readers, it is kind of off-putting. It is like, in terms of art and flow, it's decently well laid out. It's decently paced. It does give us sort of like an introduction in the first page to who all these characters are.
I will say, I thought the whole magic healing scene was really well done and interesting. Like, I was like, I don't even know what's really going on. You've kind of laid out these rules, and it was fun to see, you know, the mesh of art and dialogue really kind of play with that, you know, all the different, she needs to find a creative way to heal Gertie because she's used up all these spells and she can only use every spell once. And I was like, that's a really unique approach to magic that I haven't really seen. Maybe it was explored a lot in the original series, I don't know. I will say it has motivated me to maybe go back and try and read the original series. I know it's very popular. I know a lot of people were pretty into it. I know it had a good crossover with the Young Avengers, which was another YA series that I really loved from Marvel. So I think my critique of it was I didn't like they were produced in those small books that Marvel released all the time. The paper quality was low, and I was not a fan of the art. It was kind of that neo-American Japanese style, vaguely lazy anime-ish kind of. So even if the writing was really good, I was at a point where I just had no interest in powering through more of this series back in the day.
Yeah, and to be fair, like the standards in the comics industry has changed, and it's in the sense of like if you go back and look at 90s comics and the way that they're drawn, you know, a lot of the stuff is more roughed out. You know, like you'll see a boot, but they won't, you know, draw all of the laces on the boot and all of the eyelets on the boot. And nowadays, like it is a standard where there is a higher quality of art in comics, and it takes way longer to produce that kind of art. So there was definitely a time in the 90s where they were trying to like, yes, we want higher quality art, but if we have simpler styles of everything, we can, you know, draw them way quicker and keep on a monthly schedule. So in a sense, I understand what they were going for in that, in terms of that type of art style in that time period. And I think another reason they were doing that shorter book is they were trying to be more like manga, because they were looking at comic sales and manga sold way more. And in a lot of cases, like it still sells way more. So something new with Runaways, which is like, it's cool because like some of these experimental comics really, like parts of it do shape the genre and like are influential in a sense like that. But I understand where you're coming from in terms of the previous art style. Adrian Alphona was the artist on that, I do believe. I'm having trouble sharing the screen, but James Clark is in the comments on YouTube. And he says, I think I read some other Runaways. I think there was a dinosaur. There was a dinosaur.
There was a dinosaur. It had a nose ring. I always saw that. You know what? I always saw that on the cover, and I thought that the dinosaur was one of the teens. Like one of the teens could turn into a dinosaur or was a dinosaur.
Like Animorphs.
That was always. And then I'd read it and I'd remember, because I always would just like read the first couple pages of that first volume and I'd be like, oh no, wait, the dinosaur is a magical psychically linked pet. And then I'd see it a couple months later and be like, yeah, that's the one with the teen that's a dinosaur.
Not quite.
You know, it didn't stick. Nothing ever stuck.
Yeah, you know, they do have a bunch of racially diverse teens, but they didn't get quite as far as having a teen dinosaur. Maybe, you know, maybe later they'll have a teen wolf. That's more likely than a teen dinosaur, but I mean, we vote for it. That'd be cool. And James also mentioned that Adrian Alphona worked on the first run of Runaways, and I do believe that is correct. I think he was the penciler. I don't know if he also did the colors. Thanks for commenting. Yeah, I think I do like that scene where she's trying, like where she's using her magic, and I do remember that being part of her powers, is she can't use the same spell twice. So that was kind of interesting. I like how they brought that back. And then, you know, there's this constant running idea that these kids had to they're like, the whole volume 1 is a loss of innocence, where they find out their parents are supervillains and they're like just kids, and they're like, we don't want to be bad, we want to be good. And so they end up fighting their parents. And then, you know, afterwards, like, you know, there's no going home, right? So there's this part of Nico who's like, yeah, I wish I had time to talk to my parents and get them to teach me how to use my powers, except they wanted me to use it for evil. So I really like how that's sort of like a theme where they, because of that loss of innocence, there's nowhere they really feel at home. They're not really comfortable with their powers. And when Chase comes back with Gertie, he's like, I don't know how to use time travel. I was like, nah. So I thought that was cool. And then Gertie didn't really get to say much, but I liked how it just comical it was when Nico was like, doctor, and then got a podiatrist.
Yeah,
she's like, I don't know what to do. Send her to a hospital. So
yeah, that was really cute.
I think that scene was like pretty great. I wish there was more to that issue than that one scene, but
yeah.
I understand it's just an introduction, but like, because issues are so short, it's like you got to grab people, and like I guess it's probably it's better for the people who are really familiar with the series or have just refreshed themselves with it. But I was hoping I could just jump on, but
Yeah,
James.
I feel
James
like no.
commented again. Let me just add that. James commented again. Yeah, I think that's the book he broke in on. It's pretty rough. His newer stuff is crazy, though. Yeah, Adrian Alphonse stuff is beautiful. Sorry, your comment?
No, I also felt, I was just going to say the next month, the preview page was so drawn, like, next month, Chase Stein, I have always, will she get the chance to say it? Oh, we don't know. I was like, this feels like, you know, a primetime something, you know, like they're really building it up to be like romance, intrigue, drama. Ugh. And I'm like, all right. I still have no emotional attachment to these characters. I'm sorry.
Yeah, but that's the thing, like in this like Netflix comicsology era of content consumption, it's the onus is on us to go and like read and watch the previous content before we watch the new series, right? If someone saw, oh, there's this show called Twin Peaks on Netflix, and they just started that, and it's like, well, that's where the TV series left off in the 90s. Like, they wouldn't know what was going on, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I guess it's sort of the same thing, and like, it's our responsibility to go back and check. So, you know, we didn't like it so much, but like, it's not that like it was bad. It's just that we didn't have the context to really connect with those characters. And hopefully during this first arc, during the first 5 or 6 issues, they'll sort of reintroduce us to each of the characters and, you know, give us some more personal context to really connect with them. Yeah, so we'll see. That's all I have to say about Runaways.
Yeah. I'll see if it reads better. I might go back and read the series, and then see how I feel about this one. But yeah.
Yeah, I'm gonna say, like, if you liked it before, you're gonna like it again, unless when you were in love with it, you were a teenager, because like you can't guarantee that will resonate with you as an adult. Unfortunately, I've gone back and like read some things I loved as a teenager, and I'm like, this is dumb. So it's a little unfortunate. So we'll see. I think it's a personal preference thing. Let's talk about Giant Days.
Yes. Oh, the feeling.
Yeah, this book club's a little dramatic. I'll let you start.
Okay. I didn't really know what Giant Days was going to be about when I first picked it up, and I read it and loved it and was kind of still lost. It took me 3 or 4 reads, but by that point I was so in love with the characters. Like, every time I read it, it's just fun. It's so fun. And I have to say, having been to Sheffield, UK, and having gone to university for a year in England, I had so many relatable moments to this book. And just everything from the dialogue to the escapades to, you know, I wish that this was a cartoon for adults or something. I want more of it all the time. Yeah, I'm gushing now. I'll stop.
No, that's so cool. It is really great. And like, it's one of those things where like, when I flipped the final page, I expected there to be more, and then I was disappointed. Because like in the graphic novel, there's like a couple extras in the end where it's like sketches and cover art and stuff, and so I was like, oh, there's no more.
Fortunately, there are 4 more volumes of it, and actually, I will say, at Labyrinth, we had a really gorgeous copy. Boom released a special edition that had the first 2 volumes, I believe, as well as the original pilot story that's written and drawn by the author, the guy who writes it.
Oh, cool.
Which is kind of a mini prequel. It kind of shows how all 3 of the main characters moved into the dorm and became friends, and it's really cute. They actually reference it sometimes in the first couple of issues, so it gives you more context.
Neat. Yeah, no, the library has a bunch of them, so I might just like binge read them from the library. I really liked it, and there was a lot of things I could connect with, and I never lived in a dorm, and I've never been to the UK. I really did like the UK slang though, because I was like, oh, context. This is where this takes place. I really like how the three main characters are visually and personality-wise quite different.
Yes.
And I think this is like, it does sort of like reflect real life. Because like, even though you want to hang out with people who, you know, like similar stuff as you, you know, especially when you're thrown into a campus environment or like a work situation, you don't get to choose who's around you. You can choose who you're friendly with, but chances are, you know, they're going to be people that have different body type, and they have different background, and they have different things about their personality that they like. So I really liked that. And also because of that, we can explore different conflicts with each of these characters.
Mm-hmm.
So it sets up for a lot of diversity in terms of storylines and stuff later down the road, because they all have just such different perspectives.
Yeah,
so right away, I was like, oh, this is cool.
It's so cute in the way it's encapsulated on the first page, where Daisy, who's the very naive one, is like, oh, do you think if we weren't on the same floor, on the same like rooms right next to each other, we'd be friends? And you get these two responses. And I think this page is just such a great introduction to the characters, because you have this like hopeful, naive little Disney princess-esque character, which she's like, oh, we're all friends, right? We would have been friends no matter what. And then you have the optimistic goth Esther going, oh, absolutely. And then Susan just being like, no. And I love Susan for that. I love her realism and her overreacting in extremely negative ways. It's the characters I had basically fallen in love with by the end of the first chapter, and really you feel everything with them. All their experiences and their hijinks are cute and very relatable.
Yeah. So I really liked it. Obviously. And I feel like, I don't know about you, but like I feel like I can see part of myself in each of these characters,
Mm-hmm.
in different sort of facets, where it's like, oh, you know, like Susan's like, you know, got it together and is like the responsible mom one who's taking care of them, and I'm like, oh yeah, that's me. But like Esther is also like sort of like a drama magnet, and I was like, oh well, I guess that's me too. And then Daisy's like really crafty and knits and stuff, and I'm like, oh, that's me too. So it was really cool it was really easy to relate to them. And even in this, like if you go to just through that first issue, there's a lot that goes on. Actually, I'm trying to see where that first issue ends. Yeah, so then, you know, like it doesn't, I don't have page numbers here, but there's a lot of stuff that happens in that first issue, where each of those characters are given something to do, and you're meeting all these secondary characters as well. And I feel like that's like one of the reasons I like doing one new issue and one graphic novel, is because you can do a lot in an issue. Sometimes they don't. Sometimes they know, oh, people are going to read this in graphic novel. This is how it's meant to be read. You know, we're just going to tease a bunch of stuff in the first issue. But personally, I feel like the hallmark of a really good series is one that like gets you right from the beginning, right? It doesn't do any sort of BS with trying to introduce those characters to you. It gives you one page introduction, and then, the rest of the 26 pages in the issue or story.
Mm-hmm.
So it just shows how much you can do in that short of a space. And each of these characters has a unique personality and different relations with other of these secondary characters within that first issue. So yeah, I was like, I was laughing, you know, like I was like smirking and like gasping in this first issue, and that's really good. That's like that means they're good creators. So
yeah. I will say also the artist on the first volume changed, I believe, by the second volume. But she I think worked on some animation stuff, and you can really tell the characters move very fluidly. There's a lot of really good gestures. There's really good expressions. And I think that really helps with the flow of the story, because there are things like mashed potato flying and landing on people's faces, and there are things like crazy collisions in the cafeteria, and making just two people standing and glaring at each other look so expressive and active is something that I give a lot of credit to. What's the artist's name on this one?
Allison Treiman.
Yeah.
I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right. Yeah, so this is that page you were talking about where there's like a lot of movement, a lot of motion.
Mm-hmm.
So
I think it remains one of my favorite panels in that scene, is where the hipster gentleman is bending over to pick up the card that the meal card that Esther has dropped, or Susan has flung, and she's standing, and you can really kind of get a sense of her trying to just be very polite, and he's doing this grand gesture. And I think there's something that's very telling in that, you know, how she doesn't really expect these guys to kind of go crazy for her in these moments, and they do, and then it always leads to disaster. You can just see it coming, and it's so great.
Yeah, I really like it, because they feel like real, right? Like it's obvious that John either kept a very detailed journal about conversations, or like people watches and like overhears conversations, because it's very natural dialogue. It's sort of you know, these sort of natural situations that would occur, and just making each and every part of those interactions really impactful and meaningful. So and yeah, even just like I like this page, because this page happens
the illness chapter.
Yeah, this page happens a lot in comics, where, you know, there's always a standard like nine panel page of showing here's what, like, how time passes and here's what's going on. But the fact that this page here really reminds you that, oh, I didn't think about it till now, but, you know, most of the pages aren't laid out like that. Most of the pages are interesting and dynamic, and showing that it's sort of giving you the monotony and boringness that these characters are experiencing, just trying to live out their sickness and get back to health. And this is the only sort of time we get that feeling of stagnant monotony in this book, of like, well, that's what they're going through, and that's how they're feeling right now, and that's why they're stir crazy and they just want to get better. So
yeah, I mean, also just how perfectly this book captures several real university experiences. The classic getting sick experience, and then the next chapter is, I don't know, I really adored this one, the sexual harassment, really, chapter. It had echoes of Legally Blonde, if I want to go there, you know, where, you know, wrote the guys who were just total dude bros who had no respect for women, didn't see women as people, see this whole thing. And then the solution that they ultimately come up with, probably one of my favorite things I've ever seen. Because essentially post this horrible list of, what is it, women, and they threaten to post their phone numbers, and Esther is one of these girls, and she tries to go to the dean. Nothing happens. She feels like, you know, a failure, and she's freaking out. And then Susan calls their mothers, and the scene where the moms come into their class and attack the three bros.
So
it's
good.
The best thing. It's righteous justice in the highest order.
Yeah, I'm trying to find that one now. It's really funny because like they go through this process, and it's sort of what you would think is like Esther's like, no, I'm gonna attack this right. I'm gonna put on a suit and make a strongly worded complaint, you know, and then they're just. Isn't it like that? All of this stuff the dean says is like classic waving off of harassment, where it's like, oh, you should take it as a compliment. Oh, you know, you'll miss this sort of attention when you're older. Oh, you know, like it's not actually technically a university society, so we don't really have any control over it. All this stuff, and like that's a really common thing. Extremely common and disgusting, but it's true. It's what happens, and like a lot of people are left felt this way. They're felt like helpless and like they just want to burn this place down, you know, as Esther says. So this poignant idea of like, well, you know, Susan just searches through their trash to find their personal information.
I like the B story in this chapter as well. Susan's personal vendetta against McGraw, who is the man who broke her heart, and she writes this horrible zine about him. And I love the bit where she hands it to like clearly a feminist type professor woman, and the woman just goes like, "This is misandrous. It's a screed." And Susan's like, man, everyone's a critic. And that zine later comes back to completely mess with her life. And what I like is that it shows that kind of like duality. You can't like, yes, these boys are making this horrible list and men are awful, but to write a zine that literally says men are awful and attack a guy who's actually a pretty nice dude is just going completely about it the wrong way. So I thought that was a really interesting kind of way to balance out this chapter.
Yeah, because like, you know, you got to show that duality of the situation of like, well, you know, sometimes you're in a situation where people are saying crummy stuff about you and you're like, how dare they? But then you find yourself, you know, just like joking around, you know, like criticizing other people. And it's like, well, you're doing the same thing. So it's interesting to sort of see that story from both sides. And I do like how it comes back and it's like, I only made 50 copies of them, but like, you know, like anything, once it's out there, right? Anybody could download my videos off of YouTube and, you know, cut my face together and have my face saying words that were, you know, publicly released on YouTube. Like that's possible. I wouldn't like it. But you know, once you put something out there, there's no taking it back. And that's sort of what she finds out with the zine. Yeah, there's a lot of themes explored in this first graphic novel. There's a lot of places these characters go, and
just flipping through it, like there's so many plot lines to draw out of it. It's like, oh yeah, and then there's that storyline, and then meanwhile, while that storyline's happening, this character is doing something completely different.
And I like that because, like, you know, like there is lots of boring parts of life, right? You know, there's a great deal of time today where I spent doing dishes and doing laundry, and it's not exciting. But what comics are supposed to do is like all of that boring stuff happens in between the panels and the gutters. The panels and what they show on the page themselves should just be the action, should just be the drama in this case. So they're, you know, and it's cool how it's not just these three characters interacting with each other. How each issue has multiple things going on. How there's a whole like cast of secondary characters that they're interacting with in one way or another. I like how there's some things the audience knows that the characters don't, but like most of the other characters know it, right? Sort of like their Esther's friend Ed has like a crush on him, and like Esther doesn't know because she's just like, he's a guy, he's a friend, cool, and, like doesn't think anything of it, but it's like clear. Like I'm sure Susan and Daisy can see it, like I'm sure McGraw can see it, like all this stuff, but like but yeah, like how there's like sometimes they have too many secrets that just you as the reader are in on, like in terms of mysteries and stuff. The readers are supposed to figure it out like just a second before it's revealed to us in the book. So I really like how complex it is and how many layers there are, because it does feel like sometimes it's like with a TV show, you can see the set, right? In terms of like, just to pick a show like Friends, you know, if they only hang out in their apartment and they only hang out in the coffee shop, is that all that exists? Whereas like in this comic, you can like you feel the fact that there is a living, breathing university campus going on around them. They've got lots of locations and lots of different people they interact with. So it does feel real, and because of that, the events that take place and are even more dramatic, and like you're even more endeared to the characters because they feel like your friends.
Yeah. I feel like you spend this whole, you know, first volume falling in love with them, which, you know, makes every volume subsequent to this so good. I know we're focusing on this one and I don't want to do any spoilers, but I will just say, like, hold on to your butts, because it's the cutest, wildest ride through university that I have ever experienced. And I went to university, so it was like, yeah, I am definitely going to be raised to the bitter end. Just final, like the final chapter of this one is so interesting to me because of how you introduce a character who, you know, is just turned 18 and she's her sexuality and in a really real way with Daisy. And I loved, you know, her crush on Nadja. I loved her pushing herself to do something really out of her comfort zone with like going to the rave and getting completely high on what is pretty obviously MDMA and just like having a wild ecstasy filled night. And then it's one of the best things I've ever I loved that. And then getting rejected, and it was really sad. And going like, can being on drugs like that make you like girls? And the conversation she has with Esther about it is so sweet and authentic. And I know I keep using those words, but I just like, I wanted to give Daisy a really big hug after this chapter. I will say that.
Yeah, and I really like the scene at the end where Esther confronts this chick and is like, "Hey, way to break her heart, way to lead her on." And the girl is like, I mean, I do like girls, but I just wanted to be your friend. It wasn't like that. And it's that others, like, it keeps bringing back that duality, that other side of the conflict, right? Because a lot of how, you know, we approach life as human beings is what we are experiencing in the moment and how it affects us. And so even though we're following these three characters, the comic is constantly reminding us these characters are part of a world. There's other people like in this world, and sometimes they have complex motivations too. And you don't really understand, like, even if something is being presented to you in one way, that doesn't mean that's all there is in the story. And I really like how this comic keeps reminding you of that, because every time you make assumption of like, oh, well, she let her on, she's like really not into her, or not into girls. And it's like, well, you know, even if she's into girls, she just wanted to be friends. So it was good. I really like the art style. While it is, you know, sort of cartoony, it is really expressive. the colors are really vibrant. And it definitely has that sort of university feel to it. I mean, not like the way it's drawn, but what's drawn, I don't know if I'm saying that right.
I like how, in the art style, one of the things that captured me from the first time I read it was how the artist had an ability to really give each character a very specific fashion aesthetic, and you could tell, and it was consistent throughout the story. And it's like, Esther's a goth, but she's not an overpowering stereotypical, I just Googled images of what a goth looks like goth, you know? Like, she's got her laid back outfits, and then she'll wear like a cute sweater and fishnets, and it really feels like authentic. And then she's got her over the top steampunk outfit that she puts on at one point that I'm just like, yep, I have that in the back of my closet too. Relatable. And then you've got, you know, the guys who are just wearing jeans and sweaters or jeans and hoodies, and that really, it feels very much like the kind of things you would see on a university campus, and it feels like she's really able to tell the characters kind of selves through their clothes really well, and I appreciate that throughout the whole series. I'm a bit of a like, oh, I like all their clothes, they all look really comfy and they look like they're enjoying themselves.
No, and it's true, because like there's a lot of comics where it's like they're, you know, like it's a superhero comic and like their superhero outfit is like their uniform and they wear that all the time. That's it. But like when they're hanging out, what do they wear? And it sort of harkens back to like Archie and Betty and Veronica, where, you know, Betty and Veronica each have their own sort of distinctive style, even though they're always wearing different outfits. You know, so yeah, that's cool too, and that it's also with the secondary characters as well.
The cover gallery at the back of the book is also just gorgeous. I almost wish that I had been buying the comic issue to issue, just because some of the variant covers, I mean, they got some really big names to do them, and it's really nice to see. I hope that one day the series gets long enough that you'll get like a cover gallery issue. I might buy that just because they're really, really nice.
Yeah, I like the one that Meredith Grant did, because like her Octopus Pie is sort of like a similar university type group of friends storyline. So it's nice sort of seeing those. I really love it when communities like support each other, you know, and it's just nice.
It's definitely something I would say, you know, if you liked Octopus Pie, have you read Giant Days? It's a kind of similar vein. I would definitely recommend it to someone. If you're a fan of Octopus Pie, check out Giant Days.
One question I have to ask you, as someone who is a Giant Days fan, as someone who recommended this to our podcast. It's not a podcast. It's a book club. It's a show. Do you know why it's called Giant Days? Like why it's titled that?
I don't think I do. I feel like it might have been mentioned in the special edition one, but I only flipped through that once at work, so I didn't get that. I know the author guy had another series that's quite popular. Is it Scary Go Round or something? Is he the guy who did Scary Go Round? Which I think is a webcomic, or it was an indie darling series.
Okay, I gotta look him up now. John Allison?
Yeah, and he did the art for it. I know, I'm gonna look him up.
Yeah, Scary Go Round. And Bad Machinery. I heard about that one.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, but yeah, I have no idea what it's called. Giant Days. Is it like a call out to like Halcyon Days, or like the best days of your life kind of vibe? Is it a British thing that I don't know about? Maybe.
But yeah, like in a sense, like I understand what they're going for in the terms of like, you know, everything's like when you're in university, like when you're in that time of your life, and even when you're in high school, like everything feels so important. Everything feels so present, so larger than life. And I sort of understand when it's like giant days where it's like everything is so big and we're just trying to get through the day. So I don't know if that's what they were going for, but you know, that's sort of what I got out of it after reading it. I really appreciated having read this without having any sort of preamble. So I would recommend it to my friends, but I wouldn't be like, oh, it's a drama series or like this, or I'd be like, oh, if you liked this, you know, check out this one, you'll enjoy it. Or like, I have a feeling you'll enjoy this comic, check it out. But even if you gave a little bit of a preamble, there's so much in it, you wouldn't be able to spoil much, right?
No, I don't know what my elevator pitch for Giant Days would be. I'm not sure. I think that's probably why I've not really recommended it the whole time. Like, I love it very dearly, but like, how do I push this? It's a story about university life, sort of, and it's great and sweet and dramatic and cathartic to read, and the art's really good.
Cool.
Definitely, it also has that like flavor of British humor through it, right? The if you like the IT crowd, if you like stuff like that, you know, episodic wacky hijinks, you probably
but
like.
I also like how it's not so heavily UK that it's not accessible. Because while they do have a couple terms of slang, you know, you don't like. I didn't realize it in the first page. I didn't realize it until later on when they said certain terms. I was like, oh, that's a UK term. Whereas, like, if you watch some of the shows on Channel 4, if you don't have an accent, you know it's going to take you a while to understand it. You might want to have some subtitles on there.
Yeah, or well, there's a scene where in the volume or chapter where they're all sick, and Daisy takes the really weird, sketchy dollar store medicine because it's given to her, and he's like, I've never felt more alive. I got it at Poundland. It cost £1, right? So that's like the British dollar store. And a person reading it in North America will go, oh, it's probably like a Dollarama. I've been in a Poundland. It's sort of like a Dollarama, but way sketchier. There's all these products with weird labels like this that have clearly been imported from like Central European countries, and some of them are really sketchy looking, and you can buy a lot of really weird stuff there. So that for me was like, I feel like if you were reading it in the UK, you'd probably get that joke like to another level, or you'd go, oh God, you don't want to take the medicine from Poundland. You don't want to do it. And that was something I kind of appreciated. It comes back, like there's bits in the later volumes where, you know, they get a job at a franchise place, one of the characters, and it's like you could kind of liken it to working at Tim Hortons here, but that franchise has its own flavor that people who know it would find hilarious.
That's really funny because, like, I thought, oh, a pound is way more than a Canadian dollar, so a pound for something at Poundland, it's like, I figured it's like a little higher class than something at Dollarama, so that's nice context because I was like, pounds are expensive.
Yeah, I mean, it is a franchise, but going into it feels more like going into one of those dollar stores in Toronto, like on the Danforth, where, you know, everything's slightly off and you're just kind of like, should I buy this medicine here? It's very cheap. It's very affordable. Will it kill me? Maybe.
Yeah, there was this great dollar store near my house growing up, and we got this like amazing chalk of killing cockroach, and it was like chalk you would draw on the walls and it would kill bugs. And then, you know, we went back and tried to get it, and they're like, oh, Canada won't let us import it anymore because it like it's bad for like your health and the environment and stuff. And I was like, but it was the best. Classic. All right, if we keep chatting, we'll just be rambling because we talked about the book, we talked about the writing, we talked about the art, talked about the layout, storyline, characters. That seems to be it. That's all you need for a good story. And they checked all the boxes.
They really did.
From BOOMBox.
This goes on for a long time. I really do, because
and like, you know, if we had read all of Runaways before we read the new first issue, we might have had a similar type discussion. It's just that we didn't have that context to get to that point. So maybe. Thanks so much for joining me today, Tara.
Yeah.
And thank you for recommending the book to our book club. Do you want anything to plug in our outro?
Yeah, I'm not doing much these days. I don't even work at Labyrinth Comics anymore, so you can't come visit me there and talk about comics. Sorry, guys. But, you know, I'm around online. You can follow me at Tara McTavish, MACTAVISH on Twitter. I usually ramble a lot on there about comics, so I'm still around.
Cool. And I'm Alice. I'm not doing as much YouTube or like review type stuff these days. I'm moving most of my talents into event planning. So I do this quarterly event called Comic Shop Ladies Night, and there's one happening this Saturday at Paradise Comics if you guys want to come by. If not, and you want to check it out later, just like Facebook search Comic Shop Ladies Night, and we're also on Tumblr. Thanks so much for joining us today. We're going to have another book club. The next one's going to be on November 14th, which is a Tuesday. The Facebook event is online now. If you guys post on the wall with your reading recommendations or message me personally, I'm Alice Quinn. We'll have the polls up soon and hopefully have plenty of time for you guys to read the comics before the next book club. All right, so that's it. Thanks so much for joining. And thanks to James Edward Clark for joining us in the comments. Oh, you missed one from him. When we were talking about dollar store, he said, "I won't even buy milk at a dollar store. Why would you buy medicine?" That's the point you get to when you're so sick with the flu, and when you're just like, whatever, I'll take anything. Yeah, Tara knows. She was one. There we go. All right, thanks guys. Good night.
Bye.